All right, everybody. Welcome to the new Paradigm Astrology Look at 2019 with Kaypacha and the Dream Team. We're freaking live.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, I see Aries.
Happy solstice.
Happy solstice, everybody.
Ow.
All right, Santa's here and a reindeer. Oh, man.
Yay, Santa!
From Australia.
Santa's all here.
Oh,
Okay. Welcome. For those of you that are with us, that's great. And if it's full, we just, I'm shooting it to, we are live on Facebook, right, Daniela? Okay. I don't know where we would put or announce that that if you can't see us on the webinar, you can check us out on the Facebook page. But anyway, okay. Thank you for coming. And let me check. I mean, the sun is like right now, okay, at 29 degrees, 57 minutes of Sagittarius. We are 3 minutes away from the exact solstice. Perhaps during this webinar, while we are talking, the sun will move into the sign of Capricorn. Very, very powerful. The moon is still in Gemini. We're going to have our full moon at 0 degrees 49 minutes, right? Ay, ay, ay. Full moon on the angles. So what we, today, thank you for joining us. We would like to just look ahead because this is the time of year to be looking ahead, reflecting on the past, and maybe some of you are forming resolutions for 2019. New Year's is coming. And we want to look at what the astrological aspects are showing us, telling us, helping illuminate for us just exactly, you know, what is in store, yes, for 2019. Each one of our astrologers here will be taking a few minutes to discuss a particular aspect that strikes their fancy. And we'd like you to hold on till the end of the webinar because Santa Claus has presents for you. Yes, indeed. This is not just a webinar. Oh, no, 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 no. If you would like more astrology and you would like to learn, grow, and evolve with us and through astrology, we have some fantastic opportunities for you to be joining the new Paradigm Astrology community. And I know some of you may already be in the community. You can just write in the chat box how great it is to be in a community of fellow enthusiasts that are into this stuff, into their own soul work, and let's just expand that community until it embraces everyone on planet Earth. Yes. I'm going to be talking about Jupiter square Neptune, and that was a very Jupiter square Neptune statement that I just made. So I'm going to switch this over to speaker view, you guys, because I will be talking, let me get, I will be talking here a little bit about Jupiter square Neptune. It is a 270 degree square. The conjunction of Jupiter, Chiron, and Neptune occurred in the late degrees of Aquarius in 2009. Go back to 2009. That was a powerful year where you may have made some spiritual, advanced, you know, a dream, a vision, a mystical experience. Yes, maybe you got into astrology, who knows? But you know, there were changes and seeds were sown on a very deep level. And then, yeah, you know, Jupiter goes around every 12 years. So 2009, 2012 came around to that first square. 2015 came around to the opposition. And now in 2019, it's going to be what? In January, June, and September, Jupiter is going to go back and forth. In January, direct. In June, retrograde. And in September, going to come back again a third time. And this Jupiter in Sagittarius is looking for an expansion of understanding, meaningful, purposeful living, and breaking out of the bounds of the past, of maybe our genetic stream, of, you know, whatever, you know, society is telling us, and to really expand our, you know, energy, our vision, our understanding of ourselves, of natural law. So it's really a fantastic year. It's in Sagittarius almost all of 2019. However, and here is where a little bit of the challenge comes in, is that it is in square to Neptune. Neptune in Pisces. And we know that Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. It's very strong. Jupiter is the ruler of Sag. It's very strong. And Neptune in Pisces is saying, no boundaries, no laws, no rules, no limits. I'm one with you, one with this, one with that, one with all that is. In Lakesh Alakin. It's like, you know, love the one you're with. I am here with you and for you, and I am you, and we are together, and whoa. And Jupiter says, yeah, 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 more, more, more. And so there can be, the square brings in creative tension. That creative tension, when it comes to Jupiter and Neptune, can just make us want to expand, no walls, no fences, no rules, and just kind of really turn into, you know, big puddles of love, you know, expand this heart space and embrace too much of everything. Yeah, to where we drink too much, eat too much, love too much, watch too many movies, just like, you know, we can really go overboard just in terms of wanting to perhaps, and this is the danger, okay, of Sag and Pisces both have to do with understanding, right? This deeper truth. And truth always is revealed through sometimes lies, deceit, untruths, partial truths, beat around the bush kind of truths, buried truths. So this will be a year where it's, you know, it's really incumbent upon each and every one of us to be honest with ourselves, with our neighbors, to really go into our own and discover our own truth. And, you know, all this Capricorn energy is saying, you know what, you better be in integrity, and you better have, you know, get your act together, be together. So that, you know, the danger here that I can see is of, you know, wanting to avoid, deny, escape through addictions, through screens, movies, sex, love, drugs, whatever, just kind of, you know, pretend, you know, that in the midst of all the challenge, and, you know, I don't want to give a dire forecast for 2019, but I will say it's not going to be a smooth, easy ride. We're going to get some bad news politically, religiously, you know, financially, whatever. And part of this will be, it will be necessary for us to hold our head high, to maintain a positive approach, a positive attitude, and hold positive conversations. And, you know, do that Cancer North node of really creating a safe, beautiful, warm, cuddly space for ourselves and our loved ones, and not close our heart down. So that, you know, this Jupiter-Neptune square to me says we can go too far either way. We can want to take off, go into galactic consciousness, and absolutely not deal with the mundane bullshit that we may be hearing, seeing, or experiencing in our lives. And the other is to not have any healthy boundaries, and where we can get, parasites and viruses, and our immune system breaks down, where we actually get sick, or we get depressed, we go into hopelessness, and we go into despair and depression that just brings us down. And where we can feel, particularly with Chiron going into Aries, we can feel kind of, powerless, to affect some of the disasters or this, that, or the other thing that, may be befalling, ourselves or neighbors. So to stay in that middle realm where we're not running away and we're not getting dragged too far down into the monster. This is the challenge of 2019, by God, where we can really come into mastery. So this is just, part of, what I would like to share. And I want to pass the baton over after saying hello to hi Lydia from Ibiza and Joanna. And how many people have we got on here? Great, over 100 folks from Portugal, all over the place. Thank you very much for joining us. This will be recorded, so stay tuned. And I would like to introduce Tim Halloran. Many of you know him. If you don't, I hope you do. Get to know him. He's amazing. He's going to be talking to us about Uranus in Taurus. Tim, take it away.
Thanks so much, Santa. Appreciate it. And yes, these are some very exciting years we are going through. When we think of excitement, we certainly think of Uranus. Now, Uranus is currently completing his transit of Aries, which has really been going on since 2011 and is currently square the moon's nodes. So now through March of this next year, there's this completion of Uranus in Aries, which is very much about the liberation of our own unique individual selves, the capabilities for us to initiate our own direction that represents our own uniqueness, our own desires. And so there's this need to really come out with who we are, our own sexual expression, our own desires, our own needs. This is in many respects birthing our individuality, and it can be a very exciting charged time, this culmination, completion of Uranus through Aries, now through March of next year. Then Uranus will transit through the sign of Taurus up until 2025. So Uranus is the great awakener who likes to shake things up through unexpected changes, sudden shifts, which can evoke our own pioneering ingenuity to discover creative solutions to bring us forward. Uranus brings us forward into the future. Now, Taurus, on the other hand, is renowned for being the slow, steady, go at your own pace sign. Well, Uranus transiting through Taurus these years to come are some exciting years. Taurus rules our bodies, our senses, and our bodies and senses are very charged. There are shifts occurring this near decade to come in not only where, but how we stabilize ourselves, how we come into our body, how we use our own senses. What security is to us is evolving. Uranus is going to electrify and awaken and push forward whatever sign he is transiting. Taurus is the earth sign that deals very much with security, our bodies, self-resourcefulness, and the generation of abundance, of resources, of goods. And so we're dealing with, well, a lot of exciting years to come, shocking, unexpected shifts in terms of global economy. Taurus rules money, the exchange of energy, because of course money is an energy exchange. Well, what money is may be redefined, or how this energy exchange may be progressed, as well as how we distribute various goods and resources. Taurus, being an earth sign, very much has to do with the generation of food and agriculture. And so this is a time where there's a lot of agricultural revolution. Entire systems of value can be changing. And so yes, in many respects, we can anticipate some bumpiness or some uncertainty in terms of how much value is, how much our current economic situation reflects true value. Those a number of decimal points at the end of your bank account statement is something to take more so with a grain of salt these years, as those decimal points and what they mean can be going through a shift as well. Taurus rules our body and our senses, and so Uranus brings a heightened awareness to our body and senses these years. Yes, we can be feeling a little bit more of an electrical charge. We can also become more aware of what we truly need to be stable, to be peaceful, to be sovereign. And so Taurus being an earth sign and Uranus being the great awakener and in many respects the divine disruptor, can also be creating earth changes, weather changes that can be awakening humanity to what the earth really needs. So on one hand, yes, Uranus can be creating these shocking, unexpected changes. We have to be prepared. But on the other hand, these shocking, unexpected changes can actually bring attention to where innovation, research, and progress is needed, what this earth needs to be able to be stable, to be peaceful, to be what this earth was really meant to be. So Uranus through Taurus can also bring so much good through this innovation and this push to progress how we handle economy, resources, our bodies, agriculture, so on and so forth. Now, these years to come, as we will be hearing, are some exciting years. There's a lot of shifts going on in the world at large in terms of governments and structures and global powers. And in the midst of these transitions, there can be the sense of instability. And in many respects, there is a need to no longer be so dependent on these outer structures, such as companies, government systems, external systems. And so part of the innovation that Uranus through Taurus can be bringing is how to create closed circuit groups and ways of generating resources and taking care of ourselves, and ideally, hopefully, necessarily, I should say, also taking care of the earth. How we can use less plastic and less garbage and stop producing all of these toxic chemicals and wastes that are infecting the earth. We need simplicity. Taurus is the sign of simplicity, self-resourcefulness. I can take care of myself. I don't depend on the outer system, the outer structure, the McDonald's company and what they're serving me. I can serve myself. So Uranus and Taurus can bring this innovation of how to do sovereignty better, how to do self-resourcefulness better, and how to create this sense of a closed circuit environment that is truly and authentically stable and peaceful. How to create spaciousness, both in our body and our world, and also how to create privacy. Uranus is the great ruler of so many inventions, such as the internet, which is very quickly encompassing the entire planet and interconnecting the entire world. And one of the unfortunate byproducts of this effect that we will probably become increasingly aware of is that privacy itself is almost a reflection of the past. It doesn't even exist. There are microphones hearing and cameras watching. There's ears and there's eyes everywhere in this day and age. And in many respects, that can be intrusive and preventing this spaciousness, this sovereignty. And so we need to invent solutions of how to reduce clutter, how to create spaciousness and come into this closed circuit privacy. So long story short, we're certainly not going to be falling asleep anytime soon. But if we can embrace that things can change in a way that can uncork the problems that are stagnating our own human evolution, these can be some incredibly groundbreaking, progressive, and productive years. So yes, Uranus through Taurus will be shaking up our world, but it can happen in such a way to allow us to invent and create the solutions that we need to be able to move successfully into a more peaceful, a more safe feeling world. So thank you for the opportunity to be here to share this and for your time. And I'm now going to pass the baton on to Christina Caudill. Thanks, Christina. Go ahead and take over. I'll get out of here.
Wow, how am I supposed to follow that, Tim? That's amazing. Thank you so much, Tim and Kaypacha, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Hi, I'm Christina Caudill, and today I really wanted to talk to you about the lunar nodes, right? Many of you who follow evolutionary astrology, you know, the lunar nodes are like so hot right now, right? Especially because they just changed signs again. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about how these will affect the eclipses, because as we know, it is the conjunction of the lunar nodes to the full moons and new moons that create eclipses. Oh, Kaypacha likes my background. Yeah, isn't it cool? I'm calling you from space, so I knew this was an important call. So I wanted to start with, I loved what Kaypacha said about we'll be expanding into big puddles of love, because the North Node in Cancer at its best can really help us to soften into our feelings of our emotions, and one of the best emotions that we can feel is love for ourselves, love for one another, love for our tribes and our families, our people like families. And also, you know, I couldn't help but think of when Tim was talking about our sense of security, Uranus shaking up our sense of security, our monetary security. The North Node in Cancer will also have us looking at our security from an emotional level. You know, how emotionally secure do we feel? How insecure will we feel? So there will be moments of security and insecurity that we'll need to navigate with both this Uranus and Taurus and the North Node in Cancer. So first of all, let's talk about when the nodes shift signs, because when the nodes first shift signs, they tend to be quite loud, and they absolutely have been, because what we see with the lunar nodes is they bring up themes that become the most relevant for our collective evolutionary growth, right? So it's themes in the collective, the high side and the shadow side. We start to see extremes of it. Remember, we just had the North Node in Leo and the South Node in Aquarius for 18 months. And we saw a lot of both of these archetypes really playing out in very broad strokes. Well, you know, Leo is pretty vivid anyway, regardless. But we saw so much of this. And now that we're moving into North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn, we want to pay special attention to these archetypes, because as we know, the nodes are not actual bodies in space, right? They're points, the points of alignment. And so we want to understand that even though some of these themes can feel kind of subtle at times, they are very significant when it comes to where we are with our evolutionary growth. That's what makes them so fascinating. And so Cancer and Capricorn are polarities, right? So they're on the same axis. So you can't really have one without the other, or when we have too much of an extreme of one, we want to balance it with the other. And so they're inextricably linked. And when we can find the highest expression of both of these archetypes, then we can really have a sense that we are in alignment with what's relevant for our growth. We tend to see the North Node as the area of the evolutionary growth potential. And the South Node tends to be areas where we need to release, or the shadow that needs to be released in order to help to fuel our North Node potential. So with the North Node in Cancer, it's the sign of the moon, right? So this past 18 months, the North Node was in the sign of the sun, so the sun and the solar eclipses became very, very significant. Now we're in the sign of the moon, the feminine, the nurturer, the mother, and the yin, right? So we want to pay extra special attention to the moon. Now the moon, as we know, moves very fast. It changes signs every couple of days. So if you haven't already downloaded one of those moon apps, I have iLuna. I think it's free or like really inexpensive. That's very helpful to see where's the moon, what's the moon doing now? Because the moon is really kind of our North Star when it comes to our evolutionary growth for these next couple of years. We'll see themes around women, around the feminine, family, our sense of protection, protecting that which we find precious. Themes about nurturing and emotional connection, right? I think this is a beautiful way to return to what is really necessary. Thinking of, we recently had the South Node in Aquarius, and there's so much talk around people feeling alienated, and actually even literally aliens in countries, like not feeling like they belong. Where do they belong? And even just us individually, we're so connected with technology. We may have like thousands of friends on social media, but we can feel even more isolated, even more disconnected when we don't really know where we truly belong. And so we'll be seeking more of that authentic emotional connection. And so with the South Node in Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign, we'll see a lot of karmic lessons around the Saturn and Capricorn, law and order, judgment, authority, and responsibility. For instance, as soon as the North Node ingressed into Cancer on November 6th, the United States witnessed a really vivid expression of that, with a record number of women elected to the House of Representatives, right? That was just such a bold symbol of the North Node in Cancer, the North Node symbolizing women and the feminine, and the South Node in Capricorn was symbolic of a society structure and authority. So, we see women rising to positions of authority in society. I think that's one of, a beautiful higher expression of this symbolism of North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn. And then we can also see in society how we are just relearning anew how to relate to one another. In many ways of our society shifting, but for one, how men relate to women with respect and with consent, right? And consent is very much, very much symbolic of this, because when we think of when we relate to another, how much are we respecting their emotional needs in that interaction, right? Rather than us trying to impose what we want out of an interaction. And so as the feminine is changing her role in society, so must the societal norms, which is very Capricorn, need to evolve around that. And so getting back to this whole theme of belonging, when we think about belonging, where do we feel needed, right? Where do we feel acknowledged? And where do we feel cared for? Where our presence is meaningful? And maybe we need more true nourishment that we can only get from close community, right? In Cancer, we think of the family and the home, the family of origin. And actually both Cancer and Capricorn symbolize ancestry. And I was thinking about what Kaypacha and Tim were saying. There's so much about breaking free. We want to break free from, our stuck patterns. But there's going to be, maybe it's subtle and maybe it'll get louder, but no matter how free and liberated that we want to be, there is this soul nourishment that only comes from those valued attachments. Now, the shadow side of Cancer can be the codependency, right? Can be feeling like you need the tribe, the mother, or the other in order to be okay, in order to feel emotionally secure. So the balance of that is finding our own healthy boundaries, very Capricornian, but also be able to open up our hearts to trust, to care, and to the nourishment of the tribe and the family. And even the concept of family these days has changed so much, right? With families being torn apart by ideology, where can we still find that sense of family and care? Even if we might not really have the traditional family, we still need that nourishment at our very roots. And then we also often hear in traditional astrology how the moon symbolizes the unconscious. But in evolutionary astrology, we actually have, evolved that into a different view of the moon as part of our consciousness and our ego. And I think why that's really significant. Oops, hello. Hi. And so when we look at our consciousness, we want to see where we can make these actual empowered choices when it comes to our destiny, right? We can find satisfaction or dissatisfaction depending on where we are on our path of evolution. And when it comes to these eclipses that we have coming up as soon as January, we've got 2 in January and 2 in July. These are peak points of evolutionary change, especially if they contact planets or points in your own chart, right? They can be especially potent in terms of shifts of fate, or destined events that can change the trajectory of your life. So, I don't have time to get into the specific charts that we have. We've got a Capricorn solar eclipse, January 5th and 6th, depending on where you live. So that's going to be a lot of Capricorn, right? And when we have, because we'll have the South Node, Saturn, the Sun, Pluto, all in Capricorn. And you'll hear more about this alignment with Ari Moshe when he comes to speak. But we want to remember that the balance of that is the Cancer nurturance. When we feel so overburdened with responsibilities, or with our work, or with our public image, or our public self, we need to return to that sense of nurturing ourselves and caring for those that we love, caring for ourselves first. Self-care is actually going to be even more needed when we have so much of this Capricorn pressurizing us, right? We also have to remember that the Cancer-Capricorn axis is the parental axis of the nurturer and the authority, right? How we were raised becomes part of our conditioning, no matter how old we become. And because eclipses are times of bringing the unconscious into our conscious awareness, these are especially beneficial times to reflect on our parental complexes. How we were nurtured or not nurtured when we were little is really the ground zero for how we feel about ourselves and the assumptions that we make about the world and about other people, right? And no matter how much work we've done on ourselves and on our conditioning and early childhood upbringing and all this stuff, this is always a path. This is returning to the origin is really the way forward to clear the path that needs to be cleared in order for us to really feel liberated. When we were small, our parents were like gods to us. They shaped the nature of our reality in a way that was unquestionable. We just didn't even question it, right? Like what they thought and how they raised us, it was just like the truth of life. If you had a mother that always came when you cried, that's your experience of the feminine, in the world. If you had a mother that didn't ever come when you cried, or was in some way neglectful or checked out or not there, then that is embedded into your experience of the feminine. And we can look at these assumptions that we make. We can look at these conditions. And the great thing about eclipses is we have a chance to flip the script, to release these past conditionings. And so no matter what other loud things are happening in the astrology, we want to come back to the origins, to our origins, in order to clear that which is holding us back from our true self-expression. So as the moon and the lunar nodes are transiting through Cancer, or the moon rules the lunar nodes, as I said, transiting through Cancer through May 2020. You know, just coming back to the very simple. I mean, I know we like to get super complex with astrology and all these different aspects and asteroids and things. But this next couple of years, let's return to the moon, right? Even as simple as coming back to your practices with new moons, with the full moons, honoring where they're at, honoring where you are with your emotional needs and your needs for self-care and a sense of belonging, right? We're all starving for soul nourishment, but yet we're addicted to being efficient and being competent, which is very Capricornian. So that there's going to be a correction around that for all of us in some way. And so with that, I would love to extend a really warm welcome and invitation for you to join our new Paradigm Astrology community. We are truly a community centered around the hearth of evolutionary astrology, and we want everyone to get this knowledge into their bones and share it with the world, with as many open souls are ready for it and are eager for it, because so many are. So with that, hopefully I made my time. I hope I didn't go over. I don't know. I'm very Capricornian, so I like to be on time. So I think it's time for me to pass it on to Julija Simas from the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. Julija.
Hello there. Thanks, Christina. I've got nothing to say, like you said from Tim. Who's going to be last? There'll be nothing left to say. No, that's not true. Hi, everyone. Chiming in here from Australia. It's good to be here. It's good to be part of this great team, of course. You know, things like this make me feel like wanting to be all together again in a real place, you know, online. It's just all we do, isn't it, these days? Anyway, so my bit here today is about talking about the cycles of Mercury, Mars and Venus in 2019. And it really is quite a difference from what we had last year in 2018 with Venus retrograde, Mars retrograde. Next year, there's none of that. Thank God, because we're just coming out of that Venus retrograde. Venus is just, come out of its shadow. And, you know, for a lot of us, you know, in Scorpio, in the underworld, or the earthly underworld, as I'd like to call it, it's been extreme. So how have we adjusted ourselves as we go into 2019 after Mars squares, was on the nodes, squaring Uranus, and then Venus squaring Uranus and the nodes. So this is where we're let's say, left with as we come into 2019. And I'm just going to share my screen because I've got a few graphs and things that I want to show that one sec. Can you see my pointer here? Maybe not. Annotate, here we go. It should work. Mouse, I hope that works. Anyway, so yes, happy solstice to everybody. As Kaypacha had said before, the solstice is actually going to be, from when we started, it's actually 23 minutes past the hour of this next hour that we're going to move into. So let's just begin with Mars. Mars, it's, when I was looking into next year, of course, Mars is now, after retrograde that happened earlier this year or later this year, it's now beginning to move quite fast. So in 2019, it's going to actually kind of zip through the cycle and quite a few signs, more than half the signs of the zodiac, meaning that things are moving on in a lot of ways for a lot of us. And as we begin New Year, this 2019, and I know astrologers don't really look at New Year, like the calendar New Year is quite significant, but do you know what? The reality is that, society does. This is how our calendars are set up. So, we do consider, the 1st of January as really quite a significant day. So, so what happens this year is that it's Mars is going to be at 0 Aries. Now, I looked into the, the history of Mars at 0 Aries for New Year's Day, and I didn't find anything till back to 1814. There were other years that it was very close, like at the end of Pisces or the beginning of Aries, but not 0 Aries. So I see that as really quite a significant sort of step into a new year with a lot more determination that we potentially haven't had for quite a while, for the state of the world and all sorts of things. The only thing about looking back at 1814, and let's just remember that a lot of the other things aren't the same, like Neptune's not in the same place and Pluto's not in the same place and a whole lot of other things, but there were a lot of wars in Europe. Napoleon was around, the French, the Germans, the English were all fighting, and I was kind of looking at that and thinking, well, is this the Brexit type of scenario, sort of breaking up how everything was somewhat unified for a while. So anyway, but not to scare you, things are sort of on the move and for other reasons as well. So for good and, let's say, more negative reasons somehow. So see it for yourself, 0 Aries for New Year of Mars. What's the potential to get on with what we've been, let's say, the changes that have come about for us now, and sort of to move on or to be more determined. A Sun-Saturn combination for New Year as well happened last year, this year and next year before Saturn moves on into Aquarius. So we've got, there's couple of years of really sort of getting down and getting real with what we really want to kind of manifest in our lives. And yes, the inevitable change that Uranus square the nodes has brought to us, taking responsibility for that change that is already kind of in our lives and going, we can't kind of look away and go, oh, I don't want that to be happening, or I don't like it like this. It's actually about acceptance and doing the best we can with the situations that we are in already. So yeah, moving faster all year, Mars is just marching on. And he's moving towards what we call the conjunction with the Sun, which starts his new synodic cycle. So his next 2-year or 22-month round of the zodiac, which begins at 9 degrees of Virgo in September. And that trines Uranus. If we remember Mars is retrograde, it was on the north node. No, it was on the north node, south node. It was on the south node, and it squared Uranus. And so into this year, Mars is going to be trining Uranus in Taurus. So, quite a sort of significant manifesting type of energy, as we know. Then it meets Venus at 4 degrees Virgo on the 25th of August. I'm going a bit backwards here. And all these meetings, as we say, when Mars is retrograde, he's closest to the Earth and sort of behind the Earth, and the Sun's in front. But when Mars begins his cycle, he's on the other side of the Sun, so away from us. We can't see him. And there's a lot of meetings like that with Mercury, Mars, and Venus this year. So as they all travel to, behind the Sun, Mercury's going to do that a few times, but they all meet in Virgo. And I find that as quite a significant stellium for what's coming up this year to really, let's say, refine and perfect what we've been working on. So not to get distracted. Virgo, so if we look at all these cycles kind of meeting in Virgo at the end of August, we can think about what it is that we need to refine already at the start of the year. So yeah, that's just the chart for that. And I mean, it might look like, yes, often the sun does have the moon around, you know, once a month it will have the moon around it. Mercury comes into the picture because it doesn't travel too far from the sun. But it's actually quite rare to have all of these meeting, as we'd say, on the other side of the sun. And I see that journey also as quite significant for what Christina said about the nodes, and it's time to nurture ourselves and sort of, you know, take responsibility as well, but sort of get back to, let's say, more of simplified type of way of what we need. You know, we kind of try to clutter our world too much with too many distractions. So refine them somewhat. Get rid of some of the clutter. And there's a few other signatures that I'd say this year is all about. Just a bit of a graph. I know Sol, I think, is talking about the eclipses. I don't want to sort of overtake that, but just to be aware of the eclipses and when planets are going to square these eclipse degrees, okay? And there's one significant thing about Mercury does an occultation with the sun on November 11th, and I'll talk about that a bit more. So just a bit of a graph to all those eclipse degrees. We're looking at planets crossing zero fixed signs and all these cardinal degrees where eclipses will be. We want to see where planets are going to be crossing that. We already have Eris at one of those eclipse degrees. Mars is going to, and mundane astrologers actually say that it's Mars squaring the eclipse degrees, you know, during the year, that we watch out for things that have maybe begun during eclipses, or especially solar eclipses, and then somewhat come out, you know, during that timing of planets moving through there. So watch Mars in particular. And you might want to note those degrees or look back at this video and sort of put them in your chart already, okay? The other thing, Venus is also moving fast. She's a morning star at the moment, and she's going to take off moving faster and faster also behind the sun, as I said. So her journey after this retrograde in Scorpio, oh gosh, you know, again, how many of us have gone through some significant transformations in this past, you know, couple of months, that now the next point as she travels on to towards the other side of the sun, or the opposite side of the sun from her retrograde, she goes to Leo. And Leo, we look back at that point back at 2015 when she was retrograde there, and 2011, you know, going back in 4-year cycles. That's what Venus star points do. And you know, have a look what was happening in your life then to get an idea of what Venus's main kind of topic or meaning is for you. And the focus is 21 degrees of Leo. Okay, so where's 21 degrees of Leo in your chart, and what does that sort of spark off? And because she's moving fast and she's not going to retrograde, her meaning there at 21 Leo is all about that mission, that creative mission that we're on to find more joy, creativity and love to what we do and purpose in our life as it's ruled by the sun. There's a lot more in all of that, but as that cycle perfects, it's the peak of her cycle. So again, the retrograde that started in Scorpio peaks at Leo and then culminates in 2020 in Gemini. So we get this, you know, idea of Venus's cycle that we're going to peak into in 2019 as something from a transformative quality of what we've just had to a very creative one. It's almost like a release that we've had to go, oh, okay, maybe I can breathe a bit more now. And then that creativity gets much more circulated where Gemini point will be. Anyway, there's a lot more to all of that, but let's keep moving. Mercury then becomes does his retrogrades in all water signs except for a little part back in Leo. So the retrogrades of Mercury all move backwards in the elements. Like last year we had a transition that retrograde started in fire and moved back to water. Then we have a year where all the retrogrades happen fully in an element, and then we have another overlap. So that's how the retrogrades work. So we're in a full retrogrades of water, or mostly, like there's only a little bit in Leo. Again, that's quite significant, that little touch of Leo in the retrogrades. So here are the I didn't put the degrees, I've put the dates, but I haven't put the degrees. So we've already got the 3 points of the zodiac where the retrogrades happen so already look at those. Where's the retrogrades of water going to happen for me? And as we know, also Mercury retrograde is quite significant to really readjust something in those departments. Okay, so with Cancer, it's the home and the family and nurturing ourselves. In Scorpio, it's our intimate others and partnerships and closer relationships, and then Pisces, it's the relationship to everything. Here I have the degrees there. So from Pisces, 29 degrees, so at the beginning and the end of the zodiac in a sense, or the end of the zodiac, and back into Pisces, that starts in March. Then from 4 Leo to 23 Cancer, and then 27 Scorpio to 11 Scorpio. So you can put those zones in already and see what that's going to target, and get, in a sense, prepared. And then the occultation at 17 degrees of Scorpio. That means that Mercury actually, if we had binoculars, not binoculars, sun telescopes, we would see the transit across the face of the sun, which is quite significant in itself. So just briefly, Mercury in water signs, what we know, it really brings out the creative element in all of us. It helps us to really kind of look within and use our, let's say, inner knowing and our inner inspiration to actually be our guide or our muse, as opposed to sort of outside distractions and things that we should do. It's like you follow a different beat with Mercury in water. And remembering that all the things that we've heard about the last 20 years or so about the quantum mechanics and physics of the universe, that our minds are so much involved with how our reality is created, so that live a creative life. This is our sort of time to perhaps learn and do more of that, and watch how we're not doing that, perhaps, okay, or what our minds are sort of filling up with and focusing on is what's manifesting in our lives. So, I see sort of things like, switching off from social media and getting on to retreats, sitting under a tree more, all that kind of thing during these retrogrades to get inspiration, not from the usual channels. To declutter ourselves is perhaps the message of Mercury in the water this year. In the water. And then we finish 2019 with this huge stellium in Capricorn, which I really, again, it's the connection. Oh, hang on, I'll just go back a bit. It's the connection of Mercury in the water signs, but its outer conjunction points, as I was talking about, the other points that make up this 6-pointed star, representing as above and so below, that Mercury connects us to, are in earth signs. So that the earth and water element is very much able to manifest. So really careful what you're manifesting from what you've got up here. And then, finishing with stellium in Capricorn, that really relates to what is coming up for 2020. So I kind of see 2019 in a sense preparing us for this stellium and what will be to 2020 when there's so much Capricorn action. And so careful what you're manifesting, okay? And be very mindful of how we're going about manifesting the change. This is all around the South Node in the world. So keeping positive, clear, good intentions is a good idea. All right. So thanks for that. Over to Sol, I think. Let me stop my share. Do I have to talk about, oh, hang on, joining the new paradigm community. We'll talk about that later. Okay, thanks, Sol. See ya.
You're welcome, Jules. Can you hear me all right? Yes? All right, I got the privilege of covering Chiron in Aries, and well, for those of you who know me, you know that I'm a big fan of healing, and it's part of what I do, energy healing and all those things. I think it's so interesting to see how we can bridge the different dimensions, and that's exactly what Chiron is. Chiron entered Aries in April this year, and it went all the way up until September before it retrograded, and then it dipped back into Pisces, where we have it now. And it will move into Aries again the 18th of February and stay there up until June 2026, I think it was. So Chiron, it's at this point in its journey around the sun, it's at its farthest distance from the sun. It's closest to Uranus than it is. Chiron is a bridge. It's, I'd say, a catalyst between Saturn and Uranus. And sometimes it's closer to Saturn, and other times it's closer to Uranus. And in the signs of Scorpio and Libra, it spends very little time, like 1.5 to 2 years of time. It rushes through those signs. And when it gets to this part where it's now, it starts slowing down because it gets farther away. And it closes up to the outer planets, as we like to call Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And and then it slows down, so it will spend an entire 8 or 9 years in these signs. And some say it's because we need the most work right there. And I think it's interesting. They say Chiron is a visitor to our solar system, and it hasn't been here for as long as the other planets. It might not stay in orb as we know it in the coming million years or 100,000 years. The solar system is always changing along with us. But it's a visitor right now. And maybe that's why in this time of individuation that we see that there's a particular focus around Aries. This other dwarf planet Aries is also in Aries. And there's this focus for humanity right now to individualize. We are coming out of collective consciousness, where we were all consensus, where we were all group oriented. We had group consciousness. When astrology first started, it was the astrology of nations, the astrology of the king, who represented the entire nation, who represented all the people. It wasn't until, you know, very late in the development of astrology that we got these sun sign astrologies that we see today. And in the 30s, we got sun sign astrology hitting the media, and now we're moving into an era of the development of the evolution of humanity, where we are finding ourselves. Now, Chiron was discovered in 1977 in Taurus, and it was previous to that in Aries from 69 to 77. So whoever of you are born with between 69 and 77 most likely have Chiron in Aries, and you will go through this famous Chiron return as we talk about. You will often see in when you Google up Chiron online, which is a very interesting point in somebody's evolution, because then we've left behind all the midlife crisis of Uranus opposing Uranus, Neptune square Neptune. We've shedded our skin. And when we get to Chiron return, we're ready to really embrace our full spiritual power, but with the knowledge of what it means to be human. I like to call Chiron being human. Being human means being half a god and half a mortal. Our bodies are mortal, but our spirits are God. We are immortal and we're mortal. This is why people with very strong Chiron energies often go on these heroes' quests. They want to find the hero. And Chiron as well, he was a teacher of heroes. And how do you become a hero in your own life when you have this mortal body? You're living in this, well, let's say it as it is, this crazy world where there's economy and there's lots of stuff going on that we need to always organize our lives around. And still, we are here to discover our divinity. We are here to be free, to be liberated. There is something in the Chiron mythology that brings in the word liberation. Now, I've explored a lot of big people's lives. Like I'm particularly interested in people who's been to long durations in jail, for instance, and in jail they found liberty, like Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was in jail for 26 years and he found liberty, but he was still in jail. And I think that's just the perfect Chiron image, because we want to have everything so and so, and then I can be free. But we have to be free before we get there. And this is liberation as opposed to freedom. Now, Chiron in Aries, picture of astrological configurations as we have now. We have lots of stuff going on with Saturn in Capricorn, as Christina mentioned, which is all about us having to deal with a lot of responsibility and having to get up and go to work. And then this North Node in Cancer, who is driving us to become more precise and more alert in terms of personal needs and how we can nurture ourselves. So since Chiron is the key to the higher consciousness, to magic, how we get all these little bits and pieces of the puzzle to work together, we will now understand that in order to get there, why is it just between Uranus and Saturn? What does that mean? It's between the physical world and the invisible world. Saturn is the last planet you can see with your physical eyes. And then Uranus is the opening to a metaphysical reality where you can sort of, if you can think it, you can have it. It's that law of attraction thing that comes in. And that gives you true strength. Spirituality gives you true strength. To be in alignment with spirit, it is, there is a need to be free from our wounds. How do we do that? Because we know how difficult it is to be free from our wounds. And in order to heal and nurture ourselves, we need to do that before we can reach a higher consciousness, before we can reach a higher dimension, because otherwise it won't be safe. It won't be good for us. We can't drag the old into the new. Now, with increased consciousness comes increased responsibility. So there's always this, we have to, you know, deal with our own shadows first in order to be good to deal with other people's shadows, sort of. And this is why the path is not just, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be an astrologer. I'm going to be a healer. I'm going to be a hero. That's not how it works. In order to really become efficient on this path, you have to also work on yourself, really work on yourself. And that's really how we can find true strength when we get in touch with our spirits and we have that connection with, call it whatever you want, I like to call it God. We find peace and strength of mind in order to overcome our obstacle. Now, Aries is a fire sign, so it has a lot to do with the healing of the intuition, of the instincts, of trusting the body again, of trusting the signals that comes from your body. And we put this in the context of the North Node in Cancer. We can also see once we start listening to our signals, to the signal system in our own bodies, we can also start healing in a better way. We can also start healing in a way that we know when to take a break, and then we can come full force back to our responsibilities again. We come full force. And in order to do that, we have to heal that very essential identity wound. Aries is the sign of our identity. I know who I am. I know. And if you have an identity wound, you might be thinking, I'm a nobody. I do not exist if nobody else are there to affirm me or confirm me. I'm not enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not courageous enough. And then once we get into a very a failure, or we feel we fail in one way or another, we might want to solve that emotional tension by being destructive, like drinking alcohol or going and doing something destructive towards ourselves. Now, with Chiron going into Aries, we get an impulse together with the North Node to actually do something that's constructive, to nurture ourselves when we fail, because we are half human and half gods. It is in our limitations. To understand our limitations is also to accept that full on. And then we will also understand I'm important enough to have my needs met. I'm also important enough to actually have boundaries. This is also a very Aries thing. And you are also important enough to be an instrument of change for other people's. You know, we all matter. And this is the big awakening. If we could just do it, we all matter. It reminds me of that movie Ants, where there was this, the bullies, they were like a little group of insects who were the bullies, and they had all these ants as their slaves. And then there was this riot among the ants, and they say, hey, you know, the bullies, they were starting to think, what if they realize how many they are? Well, we'll be in trouble then, they say to each other. And that's exactly it. If we all became beacons of light because we started to accept and work with our wounds realistically, being humble enough to understand, you know, where your limitations are, and humble enough to understand where your strengths are, we would become extremely powerful just by being here. And together, we would make a beacon of light that can really create a change. And this is very important. Chiron and Aries will heal us from this wound of competition, from this wound of always have to prove ourselves, from this wound of always have to be right. And this will be a great time for healing a lot of relationships wounds, mostly because it also relates back a lot to boundaries, to knowing your boundaries because you know who you are, to making good choices because you know who you are, because right now you saw and you understood that you are somebody, and that somebody is important. It is very important because you are part of spirit and you are part of creation. Nobody, you know, is nobody. Everybody's somebody. And this is so beautiful. Everybody's unique in their own way. So this is going to be the healing of Chiron and Aries. And it's going to be very helpful in the larger context. I don't know how you felt from April to September, but I know from observing the clients and from seeing my life and my friends, I know this has a lot to do with making up space to accept who you are, to be authentic, to have an ego, and it's okay to have an ego. We've been taught that, you know, having an ego is bad, but it's really not. It's okay to have an ego. And I know we're running a little bit out of time, so I'm rushing a little bit to get through all this, but I hope this message got through, and I will just send the torch on to my dear friend, Moshe. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, everyone. Good to be with you all. Happy solstice. I think we are officially just about in solstice world right now, the exact moment. I'm going to talk about a pretty defining and potent feature of 2019. And this is actually prepping the way for 2020, which is its own thing. So 2019 features, Saturn on the south node of the moon. We also have Pluto on the south node of the moon. I want to introduce this by speaking about one way of thinking about reality. We often have this notion that, you know, today's today and what's happening is what's happening and tomorrow's tomorrow, and there are things that happened yesterday, and there's a linearity to our conditioned consciousness. But if you think of our life, let's say, as a series on television, this might be season 20,000. And sometimes during one season of a television show, there's going to be an episode where this character that like appeared in season 5 when the show first aired will show up again. And it'll be this whole thing like, oh, this person's back again. Our life is very much like that. And the way I want to frame it is the archetypal energetics, the vibrations that are manifesting now will, within time and space, bring back defining features that in our linear awareness correspond to past experiences, past people, past events, past dynamics. But what's actually happening is the energetics of this present moment resonate with energetics that have manifested as well in the past. So whenever we have a strong south node connection, we're going to find that in this particular episode, this particular season, a lot of characters from the past come back. In this case, it's not literally necessarily people, but we're looking at Capricorn. And Capricorn corresponds to how consciousness is always conditioning itself. That which is unformed, undefined, not bound by time and space, comes into a condition as it chooses to manifest within time and space. The condition, all conditions, which means anything that's defined, anything that's formed, the rules, our thoughts, our body, the government, these are all conditions. All conditions have a starting point, and all conditions have an end point. They come and they go. But all conditions are relevant for the intentions of formless consciousness. What so often happens for us on this soul journey is we become identified with the conditions, and we forget that we are an infinite, timeless essence manifesting through these conditions, manifesting as these conditions, but are not inherently defined by them. When we have the south node moving through Capricorn and Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn is the planet of conditioning, form, structure, definition. We become introspective and reflective upon what conditioning, what ways of thinking, what ways of being, what crystallized set ways of being in a human experience that I've established from a long ago are now manifesting, the fruits of it, the karma of it are manifesting, showing me that maybe it's time to change. The fruits of our conditioning are simply the consequences of repeating anything for a long time. If you treat your body a certain way, you will experience the fruits of that as you age. If you treat relationships a certain way, you will experience the fruits of that in your relations and how your heart is being met. If you create a political condition in the world and treat certain people certain ways and certain people other ways, and treat women as less than, treat minorities as less than, treat foreigners as less than, that's a particular structure within consciousness. And that's going to have repercussions. Anything that's conditioned creates karma. It has a certain reality to it. And conditioning always implies repression on some level. If we're going to force something to be something, there's going to be some kind of reaction from life. If we're repressing what's natural, if we're putting down people or parts of ourself that are asking for attention, that are needing to be included, these parts of ourself or these aspects of society are going to become more pronounced. Because ultimately, Saturn and Capricorn, beyond just representing the idea of conditioning, at the most basic core level, reflects the potential and the wisdom within each soul to consciously define the conditions of its life. For all of us, to define the conditional reality of our life, the structural reality that we are creating for ourselves in resonance, in harmony, in alignment with what we're truly desiring to create. And if we're following a path of conditioning that becomes repressive and unhealthy and unuseful and pushes away parts of ourselves, parts of society, or parts of nature, then this is going to reflect a reality that's building a goal, a vision, an intention that maybe isn't in harmony with our deepest, deepest truth. So Saturn moving over the south node in Capricorn invites introspection and reflection upon how have I gotten to where I am right now? And do I like it? Is this working for me? Is this something that I want to experience more of? And this then invites the good old work of unraveling. Where do I actually want to be? And it's maybe not hard work, but it's slow work, which can be translated as hard, but it's actually not hard. It just can be difficult if we're resisting it and we think of it as hard, but it's slow. It takes time. To build new patterns, we need gentleness. Everything that's formed, everything that's crystallized started off very small, started off very soft. Everything, even the hardest tree, seed, right? It sprouts, it's so soft. A pattern, a thought, a way of being that started in our mind, it had to just sort of be a suggestion of something slight, something that wasn't really holding strongly onto us. So any significant change in ourselves, in society, in government, anything, requires and invites a masterful orientation to slowness and gentleness, to have the wisdom and understand that all changes happen by creating a pattern that can last. And one of the things we learn with Saturn in Capricorn is you don't rush. If you rush, if you try to get things done now and get to where you want to go, you're just going to create more repression. Conditioning has to take time. That's the gift. That's the beauty of form. We get to master consciousness by inhabiting this reality with great awareness and intention. If we are just without a body, then you think it manifests, but we're learning how to incorporate and include our physical reality into our manifestation. So the introspection, the invitation to really tune into what do I want to create, also brings up the notion of self-responsibility, where we begin to take it upon ourselves, the work that is necessary. And if I can say that for all of us on this journey, where we are relative to where we might want to be, there's no one incarnated that doesn't have a great amount of strength. And that's something that I keep on learning and witnessing in others as well, that we have so much more strength than we tend to believe. We are so much stronger and capable and resilient than we otherwise understand. And so life often brings us to obstacles, impasses, where we feel, I don't have the strength or the ability to do this. Where I'm coming from is so heavy and strong. And yet, we're in season 20,000 something right now. You've been watching this television show for many, many lifetimes. You've gone a long way. Maybe you don't remember when you first started this television series, when it first aired. Maybe there was no beginning. But either way, it's pretty ancient, it's pretty old, and it's going to keep on going. You can rest assured that change can happen. And when we had this going on, this kind of transit, it really, the timing is right. And I'll just close by adding as well that we have Pluto on the south node as well. And many of the things that I said are implicit in this, but Pluto, of course, says evolution. So you have to change. That's kind of the cherry on top. It's like timing says everything has to die. Everything that comes must go. That's true with all form. And then when Pluto's involved, it says evolutionary timing, evolutionary necessity. So that means the structures, the forms that are no longer useful or relevant in our own lives and the world around us, they have to change. And this is the introduction to 2020. Because then we have Saturn crosses Pluto. It's a new phase, completing a 30-ish year cycle with Pluto. They pass the south node. They're ending Capricorn, moving into Aquarius. What's happening right now is there's a completion happening. The energies of Saturn and Pluto moving towards the south node, moving towards each other in 2019 are a purging, becoming self-aware, self-responsible, because we are preparing for a new phase. And that phase could be very cataclysmic, bring a lot of changes. So the more we consciously embrace our own power and do our own work and know that we can, that we're well equipped, the better and more joyful it could be. I'll say the Saturn's joy. We often don't hear that association, but there is joy in doing our work, in knowing that we're choosing to live with integrity and alignment when we know we're doing exactly what we need to do to take responsibility for our greater purpose. Then we can be at peace, and there's a joy and an ease in our life. All right, much love to you all. Merry Solstice, and so much love and blessings for this new journey this next year.
Well, speaking of joy, ho, ho, ho. Thank you, Ari, Jules, Christina, everybody. Very good information, powerful information. And I just want to say a few words before I get on to becoming Santa Claus for you and offering you some free gifts. Hang in there. Timing for this year. I think I just might share my screen and whip through, okay, what I feel to be some powerful periods. And of course, if we look at the charts, it becomes very apparent, very easily, very quickly, what days and months we will be coming to maximum, I don't want to say collateral damage, but here, January 1st, you can see the sun is conjunct Saturn. And so through January, the sun is going to be, joining together with Saturn, Pluto, and then the South Node. So I think January is going to be particularly charged. By February 1st, you can see that Mars comes in to square the moon's nodes. I think, and come into conjoin with Uranus. A little bit of an intense time there in February. Then the next time that I see happening here was in April. South node of the moon actually does hit Pluto, right? Saturn coming up very close through April and May. We can see that, the south node hits Saturn in May. And then through June, Mars goes into Cancer, hits that north node opposing. So I think we're going to, that June is going to be a very active time period. And then the next time I see is really when the sun comes up to square the nodes. So really, with the nodal axis, you just keep an eye on when Mars and the sun are in aspect. Either, the sun, it'll be eclipses. And Mars, it'll be these time periods where, I think if it's around, here you can see Mars is coming, through October to square the nodes. So these are, it's kind of an easy way of just looking at exactly what's happening there. I just wanted to share some of that to give you some, down to earth Saturn time and space when culminating aspects are creating a necessity to change. That's what Ari was talking about. That is what this year is about. South node of the moon on Pluto, Saturn coming up to Pluto. It's a little bit of flush the toilet time, folks. Now.
Hey, Kaypacha, there was a question about what is your theme for 2019?
My theme for 2019 is deciphering what is true and making it you. It may be difficult with Jupiter square Neptune to really come into what's true and what's hopes and false hopes and wishes and lies and, just like, all this kind of deciphering what is true. And then the Saturn-Pluto South Node says, make it you, North Node in Cancer. It's like, so it's really a year for us where we need to come into our own personal evolutionary needs and truth. And what can help you do that? Astrology. And that's why we're here, and that's why we've got some very special things for you. Yeah. I want to share my screen and say, if you are not a member of the New Paradigm Astrology community, oh my God, like what's going on, right? We would love to share more astrology with you. We have a subscription. We've got like over 1,000 people, okay, that are looking, working, sharing, and of course, getting all kinds of goodies. So what we have is part of being in our community is that you, every month, you get one of my webinars of 48 hours, okay, of the beginning of signs, planets, houses, and aspects. You'll just, so you have this, you know, steady stream every month. Every month you also get 4 additional, every week, either myself or the dream team sends out, you know, it's like a long Pele report or something, you know, that just like really comes out and, you know, gives you what's going on and, you know, another way of learning the astrology. And those have added up over the years to where we have over 150 videos where you can go into medical astrology, Black Moon, Lilith, you know, your own personal moons, nodes, or we've got a huge library and it's building more and more and more all the time. We've got a forum, an online forum that the dream team, you know, is always monitoring. You can ask a question about anything at any time and bam, you know, you've got an answer to your astrological inquiry. We've got a Facebook group page. It's private. You got to be in the community and everybody is like always posting. It's, you know, we have an active community happening here. We've got discounts and raffles and you get free stuff and yeah, I don't know, man, it's like super freaking cool. You know, so let me see what else. So if you sign up for this now, today, right, I'm going to give you 2 of my yoga videos. The first yoga video is Balancing the Bias. And this is, of course, you know, if you practice, you know, and this is what I talk about with Jupiter square Neptune this year, it's like very healthy, holy, and happy to have a consistent spiritual practice where you are tuning in, okay, to like what is your truth, yeah? And the second one is for the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is cleansing. The lymphatic system is getting those toxins out and clarifying, you know, like just getting your act together, man. So the community costs at a monthly rate, $21.95. And if you join, what is it, by December 23rd, 4 p.m. Eastern time, you'll get these 2 Kundalini yoga videos at $20 each. You'll save yourself a little bit of money. Yeah. Now you can get a better deal if you sign up for 6 months, right? You know, not only is it less than $21.95 a month, the price kind of comes down if you go for 6 months. You're also going to get a month of the membership into Julija, yeah, the CIA Cosmic Intelligence Agency. Yeah, she has a whole huge worldwide network. Yeah, you know, just like you know, New Paradigm Astrology. Soul is going to, you know, offer you evolutionary levels. Okay, evolutionary astrology works with evolutionary stages. She's going to go into that. Timothy is going to give you his moon workshop, the lunar phases and the moon through the zodiac. Awesome workshop. Ari is going to give you his ebook, okay, on, you know, teachings, poetry, life wisdom, and probably the biggest thing is the Uranus in Taurus intensive. Okay, we talked about Uranus and Taurus, okay? Timothy talked about it today. It's going into Taurus for like 7 years, and we did the whole dream team, okay, did a 7-week intensive on Uranus in Taurus, and it is normally $299. If you join for the 6-month subscription, we're going to give that to you today, you know, or before the 23rd for free. Yeah. You can save $432. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. How about that? And if you just know that astrology is part of your soul journey, your life path, what you are about, what you are here, and it is powerful medicine for you, just go for the freaking year, man. I mean, it's just like, and if you do that, you know the Saturn in Capricorn is intense. We did another 8-week webinar on Saturn in Capricorn. And it is got an online forum with questions and answers, and each of the dream team did a whole process. This is a super powerful course, and it's not just Saturn in Capricorn. It embraces, okay, like so many evolutionary astrology principles. I think it's probably, for me, I feel like it's one of the best courses that we have ever offered so far at New Paradigm Astrology. In addition to that, okay, we're going to give you the Asteroid Goddesses workshop that Sol did. We're going to give you the Beginner's Guide to Evolutionary Astrology from Aries. We're going to give you a past life meditation by Christina Caudill, along with like all that other stuff. Get down, baby. You can save like almost $1,000 and have enough astrology to eat, drink, and sleep astrology for all of 2019. And it's only $199. Oh God, man. Me and freaking sales is too much, huh? So yeah, you know, this is the thingamajiggies. So you can post in the chat box the link to that, Daniela. You can go for a month and get a couple of yoga videos. You can go for 6 months and get, you know, the Uranus intensive and more. Or you can go for like the whole year, get the Saturn intensive, the Uranus intensive, and of course, you know, just make new friends, man. It's totally awesome. You know, for the community now, I'm getting online almost regularly on Fridays and we do a whole gallery view. Everybody turns on their videos and everybody can talk. And it is truly an online community. We talk about the Pele report or, you know, the transits or, you know, questions or stuff like that almost every week. If it's not me, it's like the dream team. We do Facebook Live all the time. It's really, I don't know, man. If you want to learn astrology, this is the best.
Kaypacha, can we tell them about, oops, I'm about to leave my my safe place in space, but can we tell them about how in 2019, what we're starting new is once a month, we're going to be doing giveaway readings. We're going to pick a name and we're going to get, it depends on the astrologer. Some of us are doing mini readings. Some of it, I think Kaypacha, you said you were going to do like a full reading or something for someone every month. So every month now for members, we'll be giving readings that you can win. Yeah,
we're going to like do a raffle kind of a thing, and you could get your chart read. All right. Which you may want for 2019, man. It's a Saturn, Pluto, South Node, Capricorn year. Why don't all of our dream team members get on here? Let's get the gallery view and give everybody a wonderful farewell. We want to thank you very much for joining us. We wish you the very best in 2019. Wonderful holidays. And there's Daniela. Beautiful Daniela is, she's behind the scenes and supporting and holding and carrying so much of New Paradigm Astrology. We have to give a great, wonderful thank you to Daniela, as well as all of our great astrologers. So on the count of 3, let's all go for it. 1,
the one 2, we never manage.
3. Namaste.
Namaste.
Aloha.
So much love.
And Merry Christmas, everybody.
Wish you a Merry Christmas.
Yes, give you some.